Welcome to the Plant-Based Podcast. Did you know that plants are truly amazing? Not only can you grow them and eat them, you can also wear them, drink them, nourish your skin with them, and so much more. Let Ellen and Michael inspire you to love plants as much as they do, as they chat with the movers and shakers in this wonderful plant-based world. So, let's dig in.
After disease wiped out the greenfinches in Dick Wood's garden, Dick decided to create a high-quality, easy, clean bird feeder manufactured in the UK. And Dick, along with Andrew, are today's guests here to talk about how to prevent the spread of diseases in the garden to keep birds safe, and why their products at Finches Friend will help to do just that. So welcome, Dick and Andrew, to the Plant-Based Podcast.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
So tell us firstly, give us a short intro to yourselves and just your background as well, and then we will dig into what Finches Friend actually is and why you guys brought this invention to the marketplace.
Sure. Well, from my perspective, I'm a design engineer, but with a background in commercial vehicles. So for more years than I care to remember, I've done everything from tipper trucks to armoured cars, which literally are all over the world. And I was fortunate enough to travel with my work a great deal. But getting to the age of kind of 60, I'd had enough of the travelling and decided to have a much smaller operation, just doing design and development on my own. And then came the situation where, as was described at the outset, I had all these greenfinches die in my garden, and I grew up in a natural environment on a farm in the country originally. So I've always enjoyed wildlife, but I wouldn't pretend for 1 minute that I'm any kind of expert in it, and never do really pretend that. But once the greenfinches started to die in my garden, that's when I thought, well, I need to look and understand this. What's behind it, and what's the science behind it, and hence from there started to look into it.
Mm-hmm. So you're all the things, Dick. So therefore, what is Andrew? What other all the things are there to do, Andrew?
So as a son's role in this, obviously I'm mainly a dog's body for everything that that Dad doesn't want to have to do. My background is that I'm a software developer. I've worked for a couple of financial institutions, and then spent a long time actually working for a debt charity up in Leeds, which was really nice. But then sort of actually came a bit closer to working with Dad, moved over into doing some development in commercial vehicles as I got a bit older. So we've had a little bit of gentle crossover, but never worked together fully. But as Dad has developed the products, and we talk a lot. We live at opposite ends of the country, but we talk a lot, and so bounce ideas off of each other. And some of those things, like creating the website, handling customer services, social media, those types of things, naturally fell to myself. My sister was involved as well throughout her maternity, so we were able to work quite closely together as a three at that point. But then when it came back to getting back to the real world for her, and unfortunately she had to go back and focus on her job. So then that's where Dad and I have really kind of come together. So I like to think that he appreciates my advice when it comes to product development and that type of stuff. And definitely because I deal with the customer service side of things, I hear what people are interested in, what problems they have in their gardens and those types of things. And I think that has helped me to give some information to him on, on where we should prioritize. But Dad's the product development guy, and I'm the frontline defense against emails.
A proper family team there. And also, we have to say, obviously, we're recording this on Zoom, so our podcast listeners only hear the audio, but we can see you while we're talking to you, and we can definitely see a similarity there.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there it is. There's no getting away from it.
He hasn't forgiven me for that.
Okay, so Dick, can you tell us about the greenfinches in your garden? What happened to them? Like, I can't. I've got this awful picture of greenfinches falling out of the sky. But what actually happened? You know, how was the disease spread, and how did you realise that was happening?
Okay, so unfortunately, it's kind of not birds falling out of the sky. It's more gruesome than that. A greenfinch with trichomoniasis and chaffinches are now in the same boat. And I would say since 2005, when this disease became endemic, we've lost 6 million chaffinches and greenfinches. And hence our greenfinches are now endangered. So it's absolutely decimated those populations. Chaffinches more in urban areas than in the countryside. Probably because of more birds actually feeding on feeders for relying on their diet for feeders. But in terms of how they actually perish, the trichomoniasis, which is the disease that's created this problem, is parasitic. So once the parasite gets into the digestive system, it builds lesions in the birds' throats and stops them from being able to swallow. So over the period of a couple of 3 days, they get to a point where they simply can't feed. They try and feed, and as they try and feed, you can clearly see them in the garden struggling. They get more and more lethargic until they finally disappear into a corner and perish. The issue there is that the parasite is transferred by two different methods. It's transferred in their feces because it's going through their digestive tract, but it's also transferred in saliva. So as they try to feed, they salivate. Their beaks get sticky all around their head, and around their chest gets very sticky with saliva. The remnants of food that they're trying to eat stick into that, then get left on feeder ports for the next unfortunate visitor.
I feel sad. I feel sad just listening to that. That's just a really awful thing to hear. Like, we don't see that happening. We just see the birds flying around in the skies and coming to the bird feeders, but that's just not very nice at all, is it?
No, it's a very common situation, though, and we get lots of people contact us. Once they've got disease in the birds in their own garden, they tend to find us online, and we'll get a lot of inquiries about that. A point worth making in terms of the trichomoniasis parasite is that it doesn't need to have the birds to live. So if you've got a feeder with damp food in it, the parasite can both live and replicate in the food for up to 48 hours. So a sick bird goes on your feeder. If that food is wet in the feeder, then it can live for 48 hours independently.
Mm-hmm. So then what was your first model that you then designed? And that obviously, the whole design, and I've seen your models at the Garden Press event, it's about then stopping the birds sharing the food pretty much, isn't it? So talk us through some of especially the first design that you did.
Yeah, there's a few elements to it. I would like to pay tribute to the CWHC in Canada. This is the Canadian, Andrew, correct me on this, Canadian Wildlife, what's the
Canadian Wildlife Health Cooperative.
Cooperative, yeah, that's a bit that always gets a bit at the end. But they are the guys, they actually worked with GWH, the RSPB-supported vets in the UK. They shared their science, but they are the ones that have really shown us the way. They've clearly communicated what you need to do do the best to be rid of it. So that's kind of where we're at. So what we've tried to do, first things first, is we've disconnected the birds from the actual main body of food, so the rain can no longer access the main body of food, and we've taken the birds off the side of the tube that you'd be used to seeing, and put them underneath. And we've put them underneath on on what we call a feed station. It is a circular body which they could perch on and feed from. And by doing that, it enables us to be able to separate the birds and the food or the main body of food from the food the birds are eating, so that we can, if there is any disease, we know where it is, and we can make that piece remove easily and make it so that you can wash it in no time. And on one of our feeders, in fact, two of our feeders, we actually give an alternative unit so that you can simply take one off and replace it with another in a few minutes. Because everybody knows they've got to clean their bird feeders. Honestly, we talk to lots and lots of people, and we'd like to see it done weekly on hours. On a conventional bird feeder, it should be every couple of days. People do it once a month. Maybe they do it twice a year. There are people that do it really regularly, but the vast majority don't.
Okay.
That first bird feeder that Dad actually kind of put together, and when he had the 3D printing of it done and all of that sort of stuff. As I say, we've been talking about this for a while, and he came into me and said, son, I've cracked it. Here we go. And he puts this thing on the table in front of me, as Dad mentioned, is got a history in commercial vehicles and that type of thing, building big things. Yeah. And it is our largest feeder. It's the cleaner feeder 4, and it is a monster. The first thing I said was, very good, Dad, but back to the drawing board for something that normal people can actually, fit in their gardens and stuff like that. So one of the features that we do try to introduce is that they are larger than conventional feeders, so that you can keep the seed in them for longer, because the feed container is closed off. So they are a bit more convenient for people rather than having to go out and change every day. But yeah, the 4 is for very large gardens. It's got 4 feed chambers. It weighs about 6 kilograms when it's full, something like that. So that's why we have the cleaner feeder 2, which has the same features, but it's still a lot larger than conventional. And then you drop down even further to the single chamber feeder, which is a bit more sort of entry level kind of thing. But I'll always remember that day of the smile on his face, and then
that was the prototype, right?
yeah, that's right. That's right.
That's cool. Well, we will touch on a few of your other designs in a moment, because I know you got some new models out. But I just wanted to touch on invasive species, because, of course, when it comes to plants in the garden, we have a lot of focus on different invasive plants and kind of how to care for those. And some are obviously banned from gardens as well. Does the same apply to birds in the UK? Are there more invasive species? Certainly a lot of people would be like, oh, I see a lot of starlings or this or that. Kind of, is that something we should worry about? And are your feeders kind of helping the less popular species as well?
There's a huge conversation to be had around what you've just said, and honestly, it's quite difficult to do it to discuss it properly in a short time. But first of all, wild bird feeders, by their very nature, will interfere with the mix. It's as simple as that. Forgetting invasive for a minute, some birds will come to bird feeders, some won't. Those that do have a natural benefit over those that don't. And there is the reality is that there are birds that are disadvantaged by this, generally by feeding, and that is an area that needs to be looked at. In terms of invasives, parakeets are the key invasive species that are causing concern generally. They nest earlier than our domestic birds. They see cities as forests, and as a result of that, they are much more widespread in urban areas than in country areas, and that's almost like an enormous great C shape across Europe, from London and now quite a lot of the northern cities in the UK, all the way through to Spain, and they are becoming more and more of a nuisance, and they double in population every 3 years or something crazy. So we've actually set about protecting our feeders from both squirrels, and obviously the grey squirrel is invasive, and from parakeets, and that's the very latest product that we've done. And we've chosen to keep our feeders exactly as we designed them and protect the feeders rather than develop a feeder specifically for squirrels or parakeets. The reason for that is really straightforward. A feeding port, the more that it is, if you imagine the development of a feeding port that a squirrel can stand on and cut off the supply of food, it's a relatively expensive components or parts to do. So people tend to have maybe 2 ports on a feeder. That means every single bird that goes to that will have a choice of 2 ports. 1 in 6, 1 in 7 is carrying some kind of disease, and that will mean that those feeders are really likely to spread disease. So we want to keep our standard feeder and then protect it. So we've developed guarding to basically go that route rather than something specific.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry, go on, Andrew. Yeah, go.
I was just going to say, as I sort of alluded to at the start around having customer feedback and being something that comes into me and that channeling into the development, squirrels have always been our biggest question across the country. But wherever you are, squirrels are a problem on feeders, and so you see that in the industry with any innovation that has sort of come in. The conventional tube feeders are the same as they were in the 30s or 40s. There's a little bit of innovation on them, but in general, it's been around squirrel guarding, and we have tried so many different ideas to stop squirrels. We looked at, as Dad mentioned, the things that drop off and that type of thing. But where we sort of came to around the cage, it does keep out not only squirrels, not only parakeets, but there are larger birds which will raid feeders, damage feeders, corvids, those types of things. Crows, anything like that will come in and they will clear a feeder in a day, and that does mean that the birds that we're sort of trying to help in here are the smaller birds, the songbirds, miss out. So the idea of the guard itself started as part of the development from squirrels, and as we've seen with a lot of our development, actually, just focusing on solving one problem, we've been able to solve several problems at the same time. And the parakeet side of things is a huge issue in the southeast. The diversity that people report on their bird feeders in the southeast, especially around London, is really low because they've all, in a way, parakeets have already won there. Squirrels have already won there, and so one of the challenges is to take the time to feed birds with the guard in that sort of way, and give them the chance to come and find the feeder and build themselves up again. It is a patient game. So much of this is a game of patience. But we're delighted with the Zig guard, the invasive guard, because not only does it do the job that we want it to, but as Dad sort of briefly brought up on there, the principle behind it is it still allows the feeder to be cleaned. You can drop the bottom off. You can easily get in and take the bottom out of the feeder and clean it. So we're sort of ticking quite a few boxes there. But from my point of view, I can finally say when people are coming in, what about squirrels? What about squirrels? I'm like, well, actually, we've got an answer now to that, which is, and it doesn't compromise on our principles of actually being able to provide a high welfare feeder at the same time.
Yeah, that's great. Do you know what? You were obviously, we've been talking about parakeets quite a lot. I never knew they were invasive. I've only ever seen them like in Bushy Park or wherever in London. Yeah. And on my allotment site, which is in Norwich in Norfolk, it's a very urban site. Someone was actually telling me that there was parakeets on the allotment in Norwich, and they were worried because that could potentially cause problems for the goldfinches. I think he said goldfinches. And I never knew that would ever be a problem. I think they've moved on. I don't know that they're there now. I don't think anyone ever has mentioned it again. But I had no idea that parakeets were, as problematic as they are. You just see these lovely green, colourful birds that in the parks in London.
It feels exotic and fun, but
I would never have known that. Interesting.
It's one of the challenges as well. Is they're beautiful and they're interesting, and I mean, especially if you are in London, then you'll be used to them because they've been there since the 70s. I think that was when things sort of started, and we've got a map that was from the BBC in the early 2000s that shows them as far north as Scotland. They have been going north for a very long time, but and it's a bit the same with the squirrels as well. Sometimes there can be a slightly uncomfortable conversation about squirrels are lovely, they're fluffy, they're cute, they're interesting, we see them, so should we stop them? We very early on, I think it was someone from the National Trust, Dad, I don't know if you remember, a warden for the National Trust had got in touch, and and again, it's an uncomfortable conversation, but they had to cull squirrels in the forest that they were warden for, but no one likes the idea of doing that. It's it's not a nice thing, but the reports of the difference in the wildlife and the diversity and that type of thing after the culling that's the counterbalance to the difficult conversations that we sort of have there. And from our point of view, we always say that bird feeding should be supplementary. It should, if you can feed naturally in your garden, if you have the time and the resources to do that, then the bird feeder is a supplementary thing to help out. And you don't need to feed squirrels and you don't need to feed parakeets. They've got an advantage. That's the nature of invasive species, that they have an advantage over the other birds that are around. And so they don't need the help. It's the smaller birds that do need the help in this situation, which is what we're trying to target, and that's the justification for guarding feeders.
It is worth mentioning that parakeets are not a species in their own right. They're a group of species, so there are lots of different parakeets as well. They're parrots. They belong in the Amazon. They don't belong here. So that's a bit of parakeet history.
Yeah, that's actually really, really interesting. So you've got other products as well, haven't you? Tell us about the whole range of products that you've got, please.
So as we move on, we're trying to deal with each individual issue as we see it. So initially we did our 3 hanging feeders, which will suit most people, easy to wash and keeping the food dry. We then went on to the issue of peanuts. A peanut feeder is a mesh cage, completely open to the elements, and almost anybody who's been truly honest has taken a peanut feeder apart to find it full of mould and just a dreadful core of wet mush in the centre. So I appreciate that listeners won't be able to see, but this is our peanut feeder. So what we've done is basically sealed the peanuts off in an area that they will always be dry. Inside is a cone, and that cone means that the peanuts are fed in age order. Down behind a grill, which is where the peanuts are accessed from, and underneath that is an area where the bird's feet can go, and effectively we're trying to separate their feet from the food, because again it's you can have feces on their feet, which then end up in the food, and disease being travelled. The reality here is that they often bridge the two. We can't teach them to only use the bit they're supposed to use, but if we can cut foot transmission by 50%, then we're doing better than anyone else. So that's that one. We do a window feeder, and our window feeder is really absolutely unique. Most of these products have patent applications against them or granted patents against them. But if you think about a window feeder, it's whoever makes it, other than us, it is a simple open tray. It's open to the elements, and the birds can walk and defecate in the food that they're consuming. We think that's just plain wrong. And as a result, we've developed our own window feeder, which basically has a perch each end. a tiny trough that enables them to access the food. They can't walk or defecate in the food through that. And then when you want to change the food, you simply take a small cartridge out. So that's a way of getting the birds to be close up, so you can really see that. We have one on our bedroom window here. It's fantastic on a summer's morning to open the curtains and see a little of that.
I think it's something that's worth mentioning about with the window feeder is the best example as well of this, is that it's only after it's sort of pointed out about how bad the products are that dominate the market. That it's like a light bulb goes off, and it's difficult sometimes with tube feeders. It's difficult to explain to people that rain can still get in at the side, and that the disease can travel down the inside of it throughout 2 days, and all of these sorts of things, or food falling from the bottom for secondary feeding. The window feeder, go on Amazon, go on. I could list the names of the most respected organisations that everyone would hold up a flag and say, this is it, and look at what they sell. And it is bonkers. We stopped, it's even a misnomer in itself to say in medieval times people threw buckets of waste into the street. They knew not to do it in the Dark Ages. We stopped doing that back when we were walking the plains. But people are selling these things, and we are just astounded that it takes that little disconnect for someone to point out that a tray that you stick on a window with a rain cover that's 1 inch wide and a tray that pokes out 3 inches, and they've got marketing photos of birds walking in food, all of this sort of stuff. It's one of the real challenges that we sort of find about getting our word out there, is actually that there's such a huge blind spot unfortunately amongst the public, but also that there's vested interests of all of these people who are obviously selling these products. They don't want to take them off the shelves. They should be off the shelves. These types of things. So
No, it's good. Like, it's educational. Like, the majority of our listeners are gardeners, so this is something really important that they will want to know about. We all love encouraging. We're all talking and loving encouraging more wildlife to the garden, but we're not necessarily understanding all the consequences of doing it. And we, everyone wants to do the best. They want the birds to be happy, but they don't know that these little bits of information that you're giving us now. So that's really very useful. Thank you.
I will just add, and you're very welcome to edit this piece out if you'd like to at the end of the piece, but we have the worst possible relationship with the RSPB. We have tried desperately to get them to engage, to talk about wild bird health and to improve the products that they sell. The result has been that we are banned from advertising in the RSPB to the RSPB's members. They have stated publicly that they won't test or endorse anything that we make, and that they will not, under any circumstances, sell our products, even though we haven't asked them to. So that is the level they will go to protect the damaging products, and they absolutely know they are damaging, that they sell.
So bizarre.
Wow.
We don't edit the podcast, by the way. So that's
you honestly have a choice, because a lot of people will not criticise the RSPB, and that goes right to the top. That is to the senior directors of the RSPB. They will not answer any letters that I write, and they've told me that they won't.
Whoa! But this is so important. This is crazy.
That is shocking.
But the movement will start, and it's great that we've got this on the podcast. We've got a lot of engaged listeners, and so thank you for being so candid and honest about the situation.
Yeah.
But
no, just on that, and it's across the board. We're not asking for any special favours. We're not asking for any preference around us. We're just asking for people. One thing that we say is, would you put an open feeder in your garden, allow every animal to feed from it for a week in all weathers, to walk in it and to defecate it? Would you do that for your dogs? Would you do that for your cats? Why is it okay for the birds? So go and look on these people's websites and look in their shops and ask you the question, why is it okay? The number of open tray things and stuff. So as I say, please as you said, your listeners and viewers, please go and look at it yourself and make up your own minds, because we hit a brick wall when we're trying to offer them ourselves.
I just want to kind of a little bit lighthearted towards the end, but I'm just so intrigued, kind of, Dick, your day-to-day lifestyle. You must be bird watching like constantly. Have you got a certain window that you watch them from? And you must be like, to learn all this about the feeding as well, you must have watched them up close and some of the behaviors, and kind of like, how do you split your time with the inventions in the workshop and the observations as well? Like, give us an idea of a typical day for you, if possible.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd say a typical day for me is that it's never typical. As we were chatting before the podcast started, and I was saying about a particular article in the Times that has been phenomenally successful for us. So this last few days, I mean, I literally have to build the feeders, pack the feeders, send them out and stuff. It's just the two of us. We don't have any organisation around us beyond that. So at the moment, it's literally 14-hour days of making and shipping feeders. We've never known anything like this at the minute, and we're just about to start shipping the Zig as well. I will say I take an hour out of every day. I've got 2 Labradors, and I take an hour out of every day to wander around the countryside with them, and it is incredible what you see in amongst the countryside of the woodland we go through and all that stuff. But I make absolutely no excuse. I am no kind of expert on birds. My wife is phenomenal. She'll say to me, "Can you hear the so and so or the skylark or something?" And I've no idea what she's talking about. So that's the real work for me. I have tinnitus from years of metalworking and stuff, so my hearing isn't perhaps as good as it could be. I love to see it. I love to be part of it, and I certainly study the way that the birds behave around feeders, because it's very important to me in terms of what I'm doing. But I'm afraid, in terms of expertise of identifying birds, you couldn't come up with anyone worse.
Well, there is an app. It's called the Merlin Bird app, and I downloaded it a few years ago, and I am completely and utterly addicted. Wherever, like, you just do a sound recording, so it's an app on your phone. You can hear birds, so you press the sound recording, and it comes up with the list of the birds that are, singing, and you really start to like get used to what you can hear. And I've used it wherever I've been in different countries, like cool. In the UK, all around. It is absolutely brilliant, and that has genuinely helped me to start recognizing different bird songs. So and it's free also, so anyone listening, Merlin Bird app, that's really a cool app to have.
I think talking of addiction, like dad's problem is being addicted to the development of these things. I mean, we were in the middle of it the other day, because the Zigs have just landed, so we're trying to get the boxes, the instructions. The Times thing came out, so we've got all of these orders, and we're in the middle of having a chat. And he says, "Oh, just let me send you this photo." And it was a photo of a water drinker, something that we, and it's basically, then on the phone in 15 minutes, he and we sort of bounced some ideas around about developing a new place where the birds can go and drink from. Okay. So even in the middle of all of this, he can't help himself. We've got the cleaner nest boxes as well. So we've got nest boxes that are coming out in, I guess that's a few months away, is it, Dad? But not so far away.
Hopefully October, November.
Oh, amazing! Wow.
So yeah, we're sort of, this is meant to be Dad's semi-retirement, but unfortunately things just kind of keep coming along.
I think it sounds like there's definitely more to come from you, helping keep our lovely garden birds safe and healthy. Where can listeners find you online? Can you tell us what your website address is, or your social media tags, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so everything is Finches Friend. So it's finchesfriend.com or at Finches Friend on Instagram and Twitter. This is it's Finches plural, so Finches friend, and we agonized over where the apostrophe should go in that and all of that sort of thing. But the idea is that we're a friend to all of the finches, and therefore it's pluralised on there. And we've actually done quite a bit of work with Wildlife Kate, who does Kate McRae does a lot of live video feeds for Springwatch and that type of thing. She's a former teacher, and she chastises us quite regularly about whether or not we should have had the apostrophe in there or not.
Brilliant.
The website's the best place, and for contact as well via email. We do our best on social media, but people think social media is free, but it's time is the thing on there.
True, yeah.
That's true. Well, finchesfriend.com then for everybody listen, go and check out all of the lovely products there. Thank you both so much, Nick and Andrew, for being here on the podcast today. We appreciate it. It's been really interesting learning about invasive species, disease spread, and I definitely think listeners will be taking away some tips there.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. It's been lovely.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
No worries. Thank you. The music for the Plant-Based podcast is part of the song Grow by Mikey James, and our editor is Gareth Patch of Semi Echo.